Thokozani, I am Dimu, and I thank you so much for choosing to view my video. Today I'll be talking about a loss of a baby and aspects thereof spiritually. And when I'm talking about loss, it can be an abortion, a miscarriage, and a stillborn. And I think it's very important that also us as healers are well informed, with these medical terms and all of these, that we kind of understand how to deal with them in a more informed way, other than being judgmental or making someone feel bad or feel as if they just have this bad omen upon their life, and try to at least be more understanding, because the whole point is to heal. And our communities will make you just feel shunned for just going through this. And trust me, none of these are planned. I mean, no one plans, as much as no one plans to be pregnant. It happens, it's nature. So I'll go through the terms I've just touched on, which is an abortion, miscarriage, and a stillborn, and just give understanding to someone who just isn't in light with what I'm talking about. A stillborn is a pregnancy whereby a woman carries a child full term, and sometimes even longer, and sometimes prematurely, and that baby then is born, and the baby is born after they've died in the womb. So they are born already, and then we have a miscarriage, where it's a loss of pregnancy that occurs when the fetus isn't fully developed in the womb. And that also, like, a contribution can be also any medical underlying factors that can also contribute to that, or strenuous activity to the anything can lead to a miscarriage. Stress, like anything, socioeconomic factors, anything can lead to a miscarriage. So one never plans to undergo all these things. And we have an abortion, which is a medical procedure that is done to remove a pregnancy due to any reason that a woman might have and sees fit enough that she has to undergo this procedure. It can also be a socio-economic thing where at the time you cannot have a child, or anything can be a reason, such as rape, or and like I've said, unwanted pregnancy, or even a underlying health factors, such as having an ectopic pregnancy and anything of that sort, or you are not fit enough to carry a child, or there's something wrong in your cells, and blah blah blah. And often doctors would advise that you carry out an abortion, and you terminate the pregnancy before it is prolonged and there's more complications thereof. So with all of these things I've mentioned, it's no secret that every woman that has undergone these situations has faced a certain level of emotional trauma and spiritual trauma. And it's important to understand that there is nothing wrong with you for going through this. And I'm sorry if for a long time you felt judged, or felt out of place, or felt that I can't even talk to anyone or even get help because I'll be judged. Because how do you tell someone I had an abortion? How do you tell someone I'm stupid because I had a miscarriage? There are all these terms that are there in our communities that cause women to feel shunned because of situations that we go through that we never plan to go through. So it's like I've said, it's important that also us as healers, it's important how we deal with our clients. Remember saying to me to how they get to understand better that yes, this situation happened, but there is also a way around it, and proper ways around it, so that everyone understands better. So with all these said, nothing is I can't say one is less important or one is more important than the other, because there is a loss of life involved in all of these situations. I might not have mentioned all of them, but I'll just stick to this basic, so at least I kind of reach home and make someone understand broader than just narrowing it down to just loss of life, spirituality. You can at least understand better. So loss of life, however you look at it, is like a passing of someone in the family. And no matter if the pregnancy was 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 years, there was life in your body, and as much as we're spiritual beings, it's important to understand that life is spiritual. I always say, and I always sound like a broken record in all my vids, because it is the truth. I cannot hide the truth from you. It is the truth. Life is spiritual. And once you look at life in a spiritual way, you tend to understand that, oh, this is how I'm supposed to deal with things, or how to move around things, you know. So there's always, you hear, you need to get cleansed. The reason your life is not going okay is because there's a baby you terminated, or there's a baby that died and you didn't get proper procedure for it. With the stillborn, you know, it always happens differently, because the family tends to be more supportive around it. Sometimes not, you know, depending, and you go out and seek help and get a cleansing, you know. And with a miscarriage, sometimes you don't even go out and seek a cleansing, because you're like, whatever, you know. And sometimes with an abortion, you are afraid to go out and seek help, because you come into me and I'm like, you had an abortion, and you're like, no, it's a miscarriage, and you know very well what happened. So it's important for also now as a client to be open, you know, enough that you get the help required for your situation. So now I'll take you to a spirituality level of how we look at things, or and dispel this, so that you can get help for yourself. So now, once a baby, a soul has been inamanamba iphumile ukuthi manje uzozalwa, kuzoba nawe, kuzoba nomntwana, ne, namanamba iphumile, that spirit is automatically manifested into your life, and then you fall pregnant, you know. Seeing fit that your ancestors, you know, whether with the person you met with, they see fit that, you know what, a child can be, you know, conceived, and you conceive that child, you know, not, you know, thinking further of this can happen, you know, there can be a stillborn, it can be a miscarriage, or any of this, you know. There was a while, you know, where I used to question myself a lot, up until, you know, I think these answers were kind of revealed to me that, you know what, life is spiritual in every aspect, however you look at it, you know. I'll take, for instance, a miscarriage. The baby was miscarried. The physical aspect of the child was miscarried. So what happens to that spirit? That spirit goes back and waits in line again, you know. It steps out, you know, and goes back and waits in line for you to what? Conceive again. And then that same spirit comes back again to manifest itself in your life again as the baby you're supposed to have, you know. And there's not always a look at it as the baby died, it was miscarried, it was not yet time, you know. Sometimes there is a premature manifestation of a spirit into the physical world, and that is why these certain factors can happen, you know. And then we have a stillborn, whereby that child, you know, you find in most cases when a stillborn happen, what people don't understand is sometimes it's you know, a sad thing, because that is a loss of life on its own. That child died, you know. So that is when you can go through the whole procedure of naming the child, you know, buying things and performing whatever ritual, and depending on the families, etc., etc. So with an abortion, because you made that decision to terminate, because I always say, trust me, if the child was supposed to be there, regardless of the miscarriage or the stillborn or the like the abortion, the child was going begazozalwa. But because of life is spiritual, you cannot control it. Like, you can't control life. One led to two, two led to three, and then the child, you know, azange wabakona. So then when you look at an abortion, what I'd like to just highlight on, you go for a consultation and they tell you there's a child and what not. It's important that if you have went through either of these things, as soon as possible, you know, after a certain period, you go get a cleansing. And it's important that you get the cleansing ASAP. Why I'm saying that? Let's say you have a termination today, right? And you terminate the pregnancy, and that child's spirit remains attached to your spirit, né? For the duration of the pregnancy and post the pregnancy. And what happens is that child develops uyakula spiritually, and just like any other child, they become attached to the mother, you know. So then what happens is that there's a buffering or in your life akuna download eright impilo yakho. Reason being is that you are trapped in between the physical and the spiritual realm, whereby in the physical realm you don't have a child, but in the spiritual there is a child attached to you. When your people see you, they see, the child. And 80% of the time when that happens, that child is not yet received back to amadlozi akho, unless a certain ritual is performed whereby uyageza and there's a slaughtering involved, and so and so and so. Because one thing we need to understand, that why sigeza or why kuzilwa umuntu meke ngasekho emhlabeni is because we are shedding off the connection that we had with them in the physical world. So now we need to break that, so now that we are able to receive and connect with them on a more spiritual level, because they're no longer of this world. So if that thing is not done properly, then there becomes a problem, because that spirit will forever relate to you as though it's existing in the physical world. So some spirits are not like the others, and we can't base all situations based on something, because sometimes that child is with you in your life, and because of this child attached to your life, kuba yi-problem ngokomoya. Omunye umuntu might see you and say ukuthi unesilwane, and sometimes it's not even isilwane, because what happens, that child, it can cause a problem whereby you don't have proper relationships, your financial things go astray, your life just is a mess, because it's like you're living a double life. So what you need to do is allow the child to cross over into the spiritual, and that is when ugeza kuba ne-cleansing, and that is why we buy a chicken. The chicken is not for you. The chicken is a sacrifice, because sidinga legazi, sidinga nale nyongo lena, because uzohlanjululwa, so that umntwana akhona ukuthi that umbilical cord to be cut. So now if it's not cut, that child can hang around you even post, you can think so if probably you went through a termination procedure more than once, do the maths, and you've never had a cleansing. Because now what happens when you have waited that long while? Now if uzoyenza this cleansing, your termination within the 9 months period, you're still in the safe. You don't have to undergo the whole naming of a child and all these other things, because once you name a child, that spirit becomes attached to you. So what you do, you can have a cleansing and acknowledge that this happened, so that your ancestors receive the child. And should you be pregnant and conceive again, that child will be in that spirit will be in the waiting list and reincarnate back into your life, willingly. So now what happens when you don't do it during the period, because remember, you might see yourself that whatever, I'm not pregnant, but according to your ancestors, you are still recognized as someone that is pregnant, and up until the 9 months is finished, you're still pregnant. So it's important that when you do something like this, you get a cleansing properly, and you go and apologize and uphahla and understand this is the situation. It's important to involve your ancestors in everything. So now, but the problem becomes when there's a cleansing that is done between a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Because I said this, I think, because there's too much information, I'll just call this video a part 1, and I'll do a part 2 whereby I redirect the message to the male side of life. But for now, let's talk about women. So you can't, I'm always against a cleansing that is done because you come into me and I'm like, yeah, you had a child, you need to get cleansed, and you go get jabu. One, every pregnancy that is done out of wedlock, you understand? So now I cannot take when I know jabu just because you guys had a child together. I need to respect protocol. That is why we do things the way we do things. It's because we respect spirituality and we respect tradition. So you do not just do things because you need to do things. So even with the whole aspect of having a chicken, between, let's say you need that cleansing, and then there is Jabu, and you need to slaughter a chicken. Trust me, slaughtering is a very intricate and sensitive thing to do, especially between a couple. Once wa slaughtera into I can't say into once kwahlatshwa, you know, akukho right, because ni end up senishadisa unknowingly, or mhlawumbe uthola kusamadlozi apho sewafavor wena because igazi liyahlanganisa imindeni, no matter how you look at it. So you don't do this boyfriend and boyfriend. I always say back in the day ngokusintu, you would get that umuntu wesilisa bekahamba ayogezwa umuntu wesilisa omdala, an elder in his family, and the woman, same applies, a female, you know, then they would get their cleansing done properly, and then that is why the white chicken would be used, because of purity. This is a pure spirit, like, you know. So now it's like, it's not as if there's something wrong with you, you know, or there's a bad omen in your life. It's how things were done that becomes a problem. Even then, because we need to understand that there is a grave. There are babies that are born and then they have grave. That is laba esikhona ukuthi sibaphahlele isilibone ithambo lakhe ukuthi likuphi. But then what happens to the child that had not even, you know, manifested? Esingambonanga nokumbona. You need to like work around that as is, not, you know, selfishly and think just because you know, every abortion I need to slaughter chicken, call the boyfriend and all these and all, because we need to always respect imisamo yabantu and respect amadlozi abantu. As much as you can't take your boyfriend emsamwagini and your boyfriend can't take you emsamwa unless something has been done. So cleansings are important because spirit, just like any other spirits, become attached to our lives. As much as we acknowledge also our kids when they are born, it's important to also acknowledge the kids that we had, or rather you had, or, you know, through to certain, you know, situations. It's important to acknowledge. So now you might be looking at this video and thinking, okay, what if I did this years ago and years ago? It's not too late, you know, to get a cleansing. You get a cleansing, but acknowledging that, because then you go through what, you know, you speak to your ancestors and you let them know. And like at times, you know, yes, our ancestors know everything, but sometimes we and open up and talk about your situation. And sometimes if you cannot, approach an elder in the house to help and assist you, as long as or you go to someone like me who can assist you, and then you put that spirit to rest, because umoya nomntana uyasogola la emhlabeni, uyazula nawe awazi ukuthi uyaphi, you know, wona uzibona usese uyingane yakho, but now into frustrating, I can't reach my mom. I can't. That's why you find even the dreams. You sometimes dream you are breastfeeding. You pregnant. It shows that another buffering in your life. So to fix it, you need to go back to the drawing board, and that is getting a cleansing. And cleansing is a restart, because seeing a spirit that is trapped between the physical and the spiritual realm. It's like the child is trapped, you know, so they need to be able to cross over and go back to your people. So even with the lendaba is stillborn over depending on amakaya namasigo. Remember, we need to look at that also. How is it sebenza ngakhona? And especially if you guys were married, you know, and all of that, and especially if it becomes a problem. It's important that if something like this happens, the families come together, because one, the person was pregnant, and then procedures need to be followed. That is why I'm saying we should not turn our spirituality into fashion, because when we do that, we lose the whole morality of why we do certain things spiritually, you know, and why we need to look at things spiritually. So we need to always understand that we are African at the end of the day, and we do things because of certain, because even with the miscarriage, back then they would take even a white chicken. You know, they would umfana would, you know, send his people by. That's how abogogo ekhaya bahambe baye lapho bayosizwile kwenzekale 1 2 3 isintu leso uyagezwa uyahlanjulula. But that shouldn't be an obstacle empilweni yakho whereby you go and do like you feel as if you're now this bad person, you killed a human, you did this. I mean, this is year 2020, if I might say, and I'm ashamed for you if when you still see things in that light and you're still gonna stand here and judge someone. And 80% of the time you find that a person that judges another person, it's also a woman. Life happens to all of us. And I do not understand why a person would stand there and point fingers. You do not judge another person just because they miscarried and because miscarry continuously, you get cleansing or you seek help, because like I say, but I believe a cleansing is a cleansing and needs water and needs this and needs a slaughtering of some sort and needs whatever. And you if you see what it's a continuous thing, because that's why maybe consulting is important, so that that it's not maybe it's a medical thing, or it's an ancestral thing, maybe and you always miscarrying, and sometimes into mhlambe eyenziwe singakhohlwa ukuthi phela lana yalo. So good have ngaphandle. So you need to always be alert as a person. That's why I always say, remember, life is spiritual. Don't go around thinking life is a box of crayons. It's not, darling. It's the way it is. It's black and white, because I like it's black and white. Why I say that, it's us in the physical, and then there's a spiritual life, and you need to just understand, like, that's how it is. Before things manifest in your physical life, they happened long ago in your spiritual life. So it's important to understand that. So no one wakes up in the morning as like, sabawal abortion, sabawal miscarriage. Nobody. Like, you cannot control how these things happen. And I don't also want to push the notion of have abortions and do this and do this. No, I'm not saying that, but know that everything in a consequence spiritually. In a consequence, no one bakutshela ukuthi hayi ugrand upababs alright. Yonke into in a consequence. So if you know that you're watching these videos and like you don't want pregnancies, humble job, a girl, and use protection to avoid leading yourself, because into one say because now when every year we are pregnant and we keep this, and then we are like, they're not fools, they are our parents, as much as communities